Prepare yourselves. What you are about to witness isn't just a political debate. It's the moment a powerhouse congresswoman dared to speak a truth so uncomfortable, so explosive, it sent shockwaves through the highest echelons of American power. You clicked for a meltdown, you're about to see it. It triggered a former president's eruption you have to witness to believe. And the aftermath? Pure, unadulterated chaos. It began on a seemingly ordinary evening, the kind of 8 p.m. cable news panel designed for predictable talking points and polite political sparring. But tonight, something snapped. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, seated second from the left, cool and composed, was locked in the usual back and forth. Across from her, a conservative strategist, all smug grins and loud interruptions, hammered her on border security. The moderator, ever the ringmaster, had just tossed out a question about how political families have influenced immigration narratives in the past. A standard softball question designed to elicit a safe, rehearsed answer. But Jasmine Crockett, she doesn't do safe. She didn't blink. She leaned forward, eyes locked on the camera. And with a voice that cut through the studio noise like a razor, she dropped the bomb. If we're going to talk about standards for who belongs in this country, maybe we should start with Melania. The table went silent. Not a nervous cough, not a rustle of paper. A full, agonizing 3 seconds of absolute quiet. Even the host, usually quick to cut in, seemed paralyzed, caught off guard. Then the conservative strategist's mouth curled into a grin, a nasty, triumphant curl, like he'd just been handed $1 million gift. He smelled blood. "Are you seriously suggesting the former First Lady should be deported?" he shot back. Jasmine didn't flinch. Her composure was iron. She wasn't just talking policy, she was laying down a gauntlet. "I'm saying if we're going to weaponize the word illegals, let's talk about everyone's path. Her modeling visa, her green card, the fast-track process. It's fair game now, right?" The cameras kept rolling. The network, for some reason, didn't cut away. And just like that, in a breathtaking 15-second exchange, the segment shifted from a polite policy discussion to a cultural flashpoint. A moment later, someone from the production crew, panicked, whispered into the host's earpiece. He quickly tried to steer the conversation elsewhere, but it was too late. The damage was done. The clip was already being clipped. But that was just the spark. What happened next, as the internet ignited, was a firestorm that consumed national headlines and pulled a former president into its scorching heat.
Less than 20 minutes after the show aired, the moment had exploded onto Twitter. Someone screen recorded it, adding the scorching caption, "Reptile Jasmine Crockett just said Melania Trump should be deported." It took off like wildfire. Within the hour, number Melania started trending, but not on its own. It was paired with number Deport Melania and number Jeb and Crockett. Two fierce camps immediately formed. On one side, the cheerleaders. "She said what nobody else will say out loud. Double standards in this country are ridiculous." On the other, pure fury. "This is racism plain and simple. She crossed the line. You don't come back from this." But Jasmine Crockett wasn't online that night. Her team had advised her to stay quiet, to let the press cool off, but someone had already forwarded her the headlines. She stared at her phone in silence, sitting alone in her apartment in Arlington, the weight of the digital storm settling heavily around her. The comment, she thought, had slipped out fast, maybe a little sharper than she meant it, but she didn't regret it, not for a second. Melania Trump, she mused, has always been shielded from the kind of scrutiny everyday immigrants face. Jasmine had seen it up close. Constituents detained for missing a court date. Mothers torn from their children over paperwork mistakes. But Melania, married to money, moved into the White House, seemingly untouchable. By 11 p.m., a chilling screenshot of her face, mid-sentence, was already plastered across Truth Social, Donald Trump's platform. The words, "Disgusting. This is who the Democrats are now," signed simply Donald J. Trump. The right-wing media machine kicked into immediate, terrifying gear. Commentators labeled her anti-woman, anti-immigrant, even anti-First Amendment, all for a 15-second comment on live TV. Donald Trump didn't wait for sunrise. At 11:42 p.m., his Truth Social post was already circulating on multiple platforms. The font was large, the words in all caps. Jasmine Crockett's attack on Melania is disgusting, racist, and anti-American. This is what the radical left thinks is decent. She should apologize immediately. The post was shared over 25,000 times in the first hour alone. At midnight, a Fox News anchor opened their segment with a chilling line. Tonight, we're witnessing one of the most disrespectful, divisive attacks ever launched on a First Lady by a sitting member of Congress, no less. By 1 a.m., Marjorie Taylor Greene had weighed in, predictably calling for Jasmine's censure. "She's unfit to serve," Greene wrote. "This woman just said Melania Trump should be deported. This is dangerous hate speech." From the other side, crushing silence. Most Democrats hadn't said anything. A few progressives liked tweets supporting Jasmine's comment, but stopped short of posting anything themselves. Conservative influencers, podcasts, and YouTube commentators were having a field day. The real problem wasn't the rage itself, it was the shape of it, the insidious way people twisted Jasmine's words into something they were never meant to be. She never said deport Melania. That part had been added by the internet, repeated, framed, amplified, and now believed. Her actual line, "Maybe we should start with Melania," was already being shortened, paraphrased, and repackaged into a completely different, explosive narrative, and that narrative had heat. At 6 a.m., a segment on a conservative morning show featured a still image of Jasmine Crockett next to the text, "Democrat calls for deporting former First Lady." No quotes, no clarification, just assertion. By then, millions of viewers had already seen it. The internet had set the stage for war, but the real battle for the narrative, for the very soul of this story, was just beginning as Jasmine Crockett prepared to take her stand.
The internet had set the stage for war, but the real battle for the narrative, for the very soul of this story, was just beginning. In Washington, Jasmine's team was scrambling. Her chief of staff, Leo Mercer, had barely slept, watching the story spiral across timelines and news feeds. At 7:03 a.m., he called Jasmine. She was already awake, already preparing. On her legal pad, 2 columns, truth and noise. Under truth, she had scrawled, "I didn't say deport." Hypocrisy is real. I'm not apologizing. Leo knew they were losing control. The internet thought she'd said something she didn't say, but Jasmine's resolve was iron. Then we remind them what I did say. Her staff, a mix of Hill veterans and young progressives, were split down the middle. Some panicked, others were defiant. Leo rubbed his forehead. "We need a direction, not another tweet." The building's front desk called twice to report someone had left a cardboard sign taped to the glass. "Deport racists! Crocker is the real threat." Inside, one of the interns began crying. They were getting death threats. "We can't keep reacting," Leo insisted. "This is tribal now." But Jasmine was unflinching. "I'm not walking it back, Leo. If I do, they win, and if I don't, they'll try to bury me anyway." She wasn't asking for an apology from anyone. She wanted to use the moment. "This isn't about Melania," she insisted. "It's about who gets judged, who gets forgiven, and who gets told to go back." A young intern, just out of college, spoke up softly. "My mom cried when she saw that clip. She said finally, someone said what we've all been thinking." That was all Jasmine needed. "If I'm taking this heat," she decided, "I'm going to make it count." By mid-morning, Jasmine had agreed to appear on a live morning show the next day. A big one, national audience, high stakes. Her staff tried to offer her a script, talking points, a safe space, but Jasmine cut them off. "I don't need a safe space, I need the truth to breathe." She was going in without a script. And in that moment, the intern whispered what they all felt. She is the script. For the first time that morning, the room didn't feel like it was falling apart. It felt like something powerful was about to shift. But even as Jasmine prepared to step into the fire, a deeper, long-buried truth about Melania's own journey was quietly beginning to resurface, ready to fuel the inferno. But behind the public firestorm, a deeper story was quietly unraveling, one that Melania Trump hadn't spoken about in years. Melania Knavs came to the United States in 1996. She was 26 years old, Slovenian-born, and trying to make it as a model in New York. At the time, she was on what's called an EB-1 visa, nicknamed the Einstein visa, meant for people with extraordinary ability. Some say she qualified, others still argue she didn't. The truth? It's murky. Back then, the modeling industry thrived on exclusivity and connections. Melania had both. She worked with top photographers, graced runways, and, crucially, started dating a real estate mogul named Donald Trump. Just 2 years after landing in the States, by 2001, she had a green card. By 2006, she was a citizen. That path, while technically legal, has long raised eyebrows, not necessarily because she broke laws, but because it was, by any measure, unusually smooth. Her visa type was rare for someone without global recognition. Her green card came faster than most, and her path to citizenship was faster than what many of her now husband's critics call the normal line. But Melania didn't give many interviews about her immigration status. She's always been guarded, poised, present, but quiet. And that silence, intentional or not, made her an easy symbol. To her supporters, she's the American dream. Immigrant turned first lady who stayed elegant, loyal, and above the noise. To her critics, she's the double standard personified. A woman who benefited from the very system her husband condemned, then stayed quiet while he tore that same system down. Meanwhile, in Palm Beach, the woman at the center of the storm said nothing. Melania Trump was at Mar-a-Lago the morning after Jasmine's comment exploded. Sources close to the family said she was aware of the controversy, but not planning to comment. She hadn't been on camera in weeks. That wasn't unusual, but this silence was loud. Still, the online digging had already begun. Activists, journalists, and political YouTubers were pulling every immigration form, every archived quote, every public record from her time as a model. One clip resurfaced from 2016, a short interview on CNN where Melania insisted she followed the rules, always. It was a line she repeated often, but the details have always been hard to verify. Her early visa records weren't made public. Her timeline doesn't quite match standard immigration processing times. It didn't matter to Trump's base. They weren't interested in immigration law. They were focused on something else entirely, the audacity of criticizing a former first lady. But others weren't so quick to dismiss the question Jasmine had raised. On an independent political podcast based in Columbus, Ohio, the host, an immigration lawyer named Hugo Marin, broke down Melania's history in plain terms. "This isn't about kicking Melania out," he said. "It's about pointing out how some people get to glide through the system while others get torn apart by it." He then added a crucial point. "Let's be honest. If Melania had come here as a single black woman from Ghana, married a broke construction worker, and applied for an EB-1 visa, she wouldn't have made it past the first interview." That clip started circulating too, quietly at first, then faster. The question wasn't just, should Melania be deported? It had evolved into, why do we accept different rules depending on who someone marries or what they look like? The story was shifting again. The stage was set, the truth whispered, but what was needed was a witness. And soon, a voice from Melania's own past would emerge, ready to shatter the silence and confirm the uncomfortable truth for millions. The stage was set, the truth whispered, but what was needed was a witness. And soon, a voice from Melania's own past would emerge, ready to shatter the silence and confirm the uncomfortable truth for millions. It started with a tweet. No fanfare. No PR filter. Just a short message from a verified account few had noticed before. "I worked with Melania during her early days in New York. You might want to hear what I have to say. It's not what you think." The tweet had barely a few hundred likes at first, until someone linked her name to a long-forgotten Elle magazine, spread from 1997. Zoe Ramirez, a Puerto Rican-American fashion stylist who once worked the Manhattan modeling circuit, had collaborated with Melania on several early jobs before the Trump name, before the politics, before the First Lady dresses. Later that day, Zoe went live on Instagram. No ring light, no makeup, just a woman in her mid-50s sitting on a couch in Queens with a steady voice and a tired kind of truth. "I've been quiet for years and I'm not here to protect anyone," she began. "But I'm also not here to lie. Melania wasn't some villain, but let's be real, she got treated differently from the moment she stepped off the plane." The comments poured in, some defensive, some grateful, some furious. Zoe continued, detailing how Melania's agency had someone who knew a guy at immigration. "Things got fast-tracked, no big secret. That's how the industry works for the right people." She then looked directly into the camera, delivering the bombshell with quiet conviction. Melania didn't cheat the system just bent itself around her. The clip exploded. Within hours, Zoe's video had been reposted on TikTok, stitched into reaction videos, subtitled in Spanish, and reposted on left-leaning platforms across the internet. CNN ran a segment titled, "Former Colleague Speaks Melania's Modeling Days and the Loopholes of Privilege." Even some moderate conservatives paused. They didn't defend Zoe, but they didn't dismiss her either. The right-wing blogs tried to dig into her background, accusing her of bias, of exaggerating, of trying to take down the former First Lady for clout. But the damage was done. Because it wasn't an attack, it was confirmation, not from a politician, not from a pundit, but from someone who had been there. And it wasn't just what Zoe said, it was how she said it. Calm, personal, not angry, just honest. In D.C., Jasmine watched the video in silence, earbuds in, phone resting on her desk. She didn't smile, she didn't speak, but Leo saw her exhale, slow and deep. For the first time in 2 days, Zoe's words had done what Jasmine's couldn't. They broke through the noise. Later that night, a new post appeared on Jasmine's Instagram story. Just text, white letters on black. "The truth doesn't need a spotlight, it just needs a witness." Zoe declined interviews that week. She refused to go on TV. She told a journalist from The New Yorker, "I'm not trying to be a hero, I just got tired of people pretending the system's fair." The clip reached over 12 million views by Friday. People who had been on the fence, those who didn't love Trump but had flinched at Jasmine's original comment, began re-evaluating. Some apologized in her DMS, some reshared her original interview. Others started pointing to Zoe's video in arguments online as proof that maybe this wasn't about Melania at all. Jasmine's team met that night and agreed the strategy would stay the same. No overplaying, no victory laps. Just keep telling the truth and let it settle. But Trump wouldn't let the truth stand. As he prepared his next most personal attack, fate would ensure an explosive face-to-face confrontation that would ignite the internet all over again. Trump wasn't finished. His team was already crafting the next attack line, something bigger, louder, meant to drown everything else out. And it was going to come face-to-face with Jasmine sooner than she expected. The Hyatt Regency in downtown Dallas wasn't ready. The annual American Values Summit was already known for drama. Big speakers, big donors, a lot of loud applause and quiet money. But no one expected Jasmine Crockett and Donald Trump to be in the same building. Not this week, not after that week. Their teams had been booked for separate panels, different days, different rooms. No overlap on paper. But everything changed when Trump's team pulled a last-minute switch. He would now close the second night with a fireside-style conversation in Ballroom A, the same space Jasmine had just wrapped her keynote in less than an hour earlier. Some said it was a coincidence, others said it was deliberate. Jasmine was standing backstage, chatting with a local organizer, when Leo rushed in, holding his phone. "He's here," he whispered urgently, showing her his phone, displaying a live video of Trump walking through a side entrance, waving to a chanting crowd. She didn't react. She just picked up her purse and said quietly, "Let's not be in the hallway when they come through." But they didn't make it far. Outside the green room, in a carpeted hallway near the escalators, Two security details clashed, her team and his, when they crossed paths, heading in opposite directions. And then it happened. Trump appeared from around the corner, surrounded by staff, walking fast. Jasmine, trying to leave through the side exit, was suddenly face to face with him, just 10 feet apart. He stopped. So did she. For a few seconds, nobody said a word. Reporters weren't supposed to be there, but someone had a phone out. A shaky live stream began. The comments started pouring in before the feed even stabilized. Then Trump raised his voice, just enough to carry. "Well, if it isn't the congresswoman who wants to deport my wife," he boomed with a sneer. Jasmine, unflinching, replied calmly and clearly, "You still twisting quotes to stay relevant?" Trump's expression shifted, smug but tense. He waved his hand dismissively. "I heard you're doing interviews now. You people love the spotlight, don't you?" That phrase, "you people," hung in the air like a bad smell. Jasmine stepped forward, calm and clear. "You can post all you want, smear all you want, but the people saw it. They heard what I said, and deep down, you heard it too." Trump chuckled, but his eyes narrowed. He was clearly rattled. "What I heard was hate. What I saw was someone attacking my family because they can't win a real argument." Jasmine, sharply, retorted, "No. What you saw was someone telling the truth without asking permission." By now, the hallway was packed. Security pushing back onlookers, staffers trying to pull both parties away. Someone from Trump's side whispered into his ear, urging him to move, but he lingered 1 second longer. "You've got no respect, no class, just like your party," he scoffed. Jasmine smiled, not kindly. Her voice low, cutting, she delivered the final blow. "Says the man who paid hush money to a porn star and tried to overturn an election." The air went still. Phones were up, comments flooding in. The clip would be viral in 10 minutes flat. Trump's face stiffened. Then he walked away without another word. Leo, touching Jasmine's arm, asked worriedly, "You okay?" Jasmine exhaled slowly. "I'm fine." By midnight, the clip had hit 5 million views. Some called her reckless, others called her fearless. Cable news split screens lit up with analysts dissecting the moment like it was a sporting event. One anchor said it was the political face-off of the year. Another called it pure theatre. But for the people watching at home, the ones who'd seen too many fake smiles and safe answers, it was different. It felt real. Two people, no script, no filter, and for once, no middleman. It didn't solve anything. It didn't end the fight. But it peeled back the curtain. The confrontation wasn't just between Jasmine and Trump. It was between two versions of America, clashing, unfiltered, loud, and impossible to ignore. The clash had ignited the internet, but as the dust settled, the nation was left grappling with the core dilemma. Was Jasmine wrong to say what she said, or were we just uncomfortable because she said it too clearly? The reckoning was about to begin. The clash had ignited the internet, but as the dust settled, the nation was left grappling with the core dilemma. Was Jasmine wrong to say what she said, or were we just uncomfortable because she said it too clearly? The reckoning was about to begin. Monday morning came with the silence only exhaustion brings. No breaking tweets, no new video clips, just millions of Americans sitting with what they'd witnessed over the past 5 days. Jasmine Crockett didn't go live. She didn't post. She didn't grant interviews. Instead, she sat on the back patio of a friend's house in Fort Worth, nursing a lukewarm cup of coffee and staring out over a quiet backyard. Her phone buzzed every few minutes, notifications, media requests, texts from people she hadn't spoken to in years. She ignored them all. The confrontation with Trump had stolen headlines again, the moment when two worldviews collided in one hallway, with every camera catching the pause, the posture, the heat in the words. But to Jasmine, the story was no longer about that moment. It was about what came after. Across the country, people weren't just arguing anymore, they were reflecting. In classrooms, pastors' sermons, dinner table conversations, even in detention centers, people were asking themselves, Was Jasmine wrong to say what she said? Or were we just uncomfortable because she said it too clearly? That was the dilemma, not the message, but the delivery. Because Jasmine's words hadn't been soft, they hadn't been cleaned up, they hadn't come from a consultant-approved teleprompter or been tested in focus groups. They came from experience, from the frustration of watching how two people could walk two completely different paths through the same system. One held to every rule, the other floated through by proximity to power. She knew her tone challenged people. She also knew if she'd said the same words with a smile and a softer pitch, they would have been ignored, or worse, dismissed. Meanwhile, Melania Trump still hadn't said a word. She didn't need to. Her silence was louder than most statements. To her supporters, it was proof of dignity. To her critics, it was confirmation of indifference. But either way, she remained untouched. And that was the lesson. In America, sometimes the louder you speak truth, the more brutal the reaction, especially if you don't fit the mold of who's allowed to speak it. Jasmine's staff knew this. They'd been managing threats all week, filtered through DC police, recorded and documented, a voicemail saying she should be sent back to Africa, even though she was born in Ohio. A handwritten letter slipped under the office door, calling her a disgrace to women, but alongside the hate came something else. Notes, emails, messages from across the country, from immigrants who said, "Thank you," from young girls who said, "Finally, someone that looks like me isn't scared to speak up." From quiet corners of America where people had never heard of Jasmine Crockett until now, and suddenly couldn't stop thinking about what she'd said. She hadn't just started a fight, she'd forced a reckoning. Back in Fort Worth, Jasmine looked up as Leo walked onto the patio with his laptop under one arm and a folded newspaper in the other. "You made the front page," he said, handing her the paper. The headline wasn't what she expected. Truth or trouble? Crockett raises questions we still don't want to answer. She read it twice. Then she asked, "You think I did the right thing?" Leo took a moment. "You said something real. You said it without dressing it up. That's rare. And it's dangerous. But yeah, sometimes the truth's worth the bruises." She looked down at the mug in her hands. It was empty. "Then we keep going," she said quietly. "Because I didn't start this for a headline. I said it because I've watched too many people get crushed by rules that only apply to them." He nodded. "You didn't say it perfect, but you said it honest." And that, in the end, was the point. In a country obsessed with image, spin, and sound bites, Jasmine Crockett reminded people that truth doesn't always come wrapped in politeness. Sometimes it comes raw, direct, flawed, and necessary. The real question isn't whether she should have said it, it's why it shook people so deeply in the first place, because maybe the discomfort wasn't about the words, maybe it was about what those words forced people to confront. And if that kind of truth still scares us, maybe we're not as free as we claim to be. The unvarnished truth, laid bare, shook the foundations of power and privilege, exposing the raw nerves of a nation. It was the moment the old order truly lost its grip on the narrative. It was the moment they didn't just lose an argument, they lost control. It was the moment you watched him lose it, watched him lose it, watched him lose it.